Well, where's Watership Down? I mean, the directions say from the A34 south of Newtown, take the old Burclear Beacon Hill exit and go east away from Beacon Hill. In about 2 miles, the first non-dead end on your right is the narrow lane that climbs Watership Down. Oh. Well, this should be it, I think. Right, first things first, I'm going to put my camera within my coat somehow, because I'll try not to bring on these Photowalks a camera bag. I don't want to be going into a camera bag. I like to have the minimum amount of stuff with me. How's this going to work? Camera in there. There we go. Otherwise, it's going to look like underwater photography. So, yeah, car's going to be filthy angry today, because the day I usually take my Photowalks, it's as late as I can do Thursdays. It's due to be sunny Thursday, which by the time you listen to this show, if you listen on the Friday, will have been yesterday. But yesterday, I was actually photographing a funeral all day long, which is something I may come back to next week and talk a bit about that, because photographing funerals is an interesting experience for a photographer. A very rewarding one, I might add. But today I'm at Watership Down, and I've been promising to come here for a long time. And it's a beautiful part of Berkshire as it stretches toward Hampshire. And on a day with blue skies and sunshine and lovely long shadows and things, it would be fantastic. But I'm having to do my Photowalk a day earlier than usual. And it's on the rainiest day of the last couple of weeks. Microphone's already wet, or the top of the iPhone with its wind cover, with its windshield, and the camera now is in the coat. And I've actually put your letters and your emails in some plastic, so they're not all sopping or gopping, as a friend of mine calls it. But Watership Down is a beautiful part of the world, and of course it has its own film, doesn't it, or book? Let me read you the synopsis. When a young rabbit named Fiver, played by Richard Briers, he's got this gorgeous sort of deep British RP voice, hasn't he, as an actor, has a prophetic vision that the end of his warren is near, he persuades 7 other rabbits to leave with him in search of a new home. Several obstacles impede their progress, including predators, a rat-filled cemetery, and a speeding river. Realistically drawn, this British animated film carries an emotional weight. That's what they said about it, and it does. It's a gorgeous film. I saw it very young with my mum and dad, and I'm not ashamed to admit it's the first film ever that actually made me cry. When, spoiler alert, when Hazel, who's one of the other rabbits in the film, eventually meets his rabbit maker, oh, I was bawling. Honestly. But I have this thing about rabbits. My rabbit Munchie, we will get to the photography in a moment, was my first 4-legged pet. Black and white, I loved him to death. If not literally, I blame myself for his end, actually. And it dates back to a football match. Arsenal had just lost the FA Cup to Ipswich Town, against all the odds. Brian Talbot scoring the winning goal. And I went out to console with Munchie, and I lay there in his pen, feeding him some grass. And at some stage, I think I inadvertently suggested it was somehow his fault. Arsenal had lost, and while we were sat there in his pen, I must have said something like, "Munchie, what did you do? Why did we lose? It's all your fault." And the very next day, Munchie passed away. I don't think I've really ever quite forgiven myself for the loss of Munchie. Anyway, here we are, Watership Down, in the rain, thinking about Munchie. Welcome to
Photography Daily, the Friday Photo Walk.
Yes, it's the show of the week, the Friday Photo Walk. Us with our cameras together and me with my microphone. Spending time together, walking, making pictures, having a coffee, eating a Garibaldi, definitely. Better still, sharing some photographs, as the show notes today carry your pictures that you've been making on your walks, and those something and nothings that I'm about to make too. Don't mention rabbits though. Well, not too much, even though we're at Watership Down. It'll set my Photowalk self off. Changing the subject and getting very excited. We're supported by the amazing folks at mpb.com. And it's great that you use their services too. If you live in the UK, the US or Europe, you can take advantage of buying, selling and trading through mpb.com. Craig Hughes does. Hey Neil, I thought I'd just share a thought about MPB as I've used them a lot. I started my photographic journey with a second-hand Canon 1000D, then moved on to the 7D, then the 6D, and a few very nice L lenses too, before finally buying into the Fuji system. Now, some people will only ever buy the newest, shiniest gear, whereas I've never bought anything new, and I've had no problems or doubts about buying used. I've put my money where my mouth is this last week as well and bought myself a shiny, well, not so new, but definitely excellent condition camera ready for the restart of the wedding season. He says, touching wood. Right, boots on, as I say, lens caps off, as I say, let's go walking. Everything is sopping already, gopping already. But I tell you what, we're going to get some gorgeous colours today. The rain just brings out these fabulous, lush greens, doesn't it? Everything looks like it was shot. I was just about to say on a particular camera manufacturer there that I don't use. But I'll not say that because it'll upset some of the people that listen to this show. The electric greens, he says, with a glint, you know me. But it does, it really brings out these gorgeous colours. Hopefully everything will work by the end of this walk. I'm slightly out of breath, as you can probably hear. Not because I'm terribly unfit, although I am to a degree. Too many Garibaldi's. But because I'm ascending this hill to try and get to a tree, which I believe really is sort of the tree where Watership Down, the film, where these rabbits make their way to this. Oh, the rabbits make their way to the top of this hill, to a tree where they find rabbit paradise. And that's what I'm trying to get to. I might stop for a while, catch my breath, read a couple of emails. Before we start, do you remember on last week's walk I asked you who invented the VHS? It wasn't so much a person's name, but a company. Thank you, Derek Stern, who was first in. Nice work, Derek. I think you'll find the answer to this one, Neil, is a chap who goes by the name of Victor Harris Stapleton, who invented it mid-70s for JVC. And I was very impressed. Of course, I wasn't so quick out the traps to realise Victor Harris Stapleton, VHS. Of course, it's not his real name at all. Actually stands for Video Home System. But you were certainly right with JVC. The pints are on me, Derek, that's what I promised. Although I've no idea where you live. So it's either going to be the pints and an airfare, don't tell Greta, or just the pints, close to where I live, or you live. I'm going to try and stick myself, because the rain, the 81% that we were promised rain, I think it's turned into 97%, because it's teeming down. We try and find somewhere a bit sheltered just for a second, so I can read some emails. Put myself in here. Ooh. As always, there's a few links that I'll share from the photo walk this week. Some links to websites and Instagrams. And I'll be popping up some of the pictures that you've been making on your photo walks as well. Thank you. As ever, the quality and the standard of the photo walk pictures you make is superb. Really, honestly. Hand on heart. Thank you very much for them. There's a link I'll certainly share from Eric Delorme. First is, I suppose, through our Facebook group, really, as he's in that, with words in the following thread that I'd like to read to you. Eric is a Canadian photographer, a supporter of the show, though I actually think it's our turn as a photographer to probably now support him back for obvious reasons, or reasons that will become obvious. The Facebook group link will take you to a piece, a photo story called "But I Thought I Was a Leo." And so you get the idea of this story. Here are the words that went with it. On the Friday photo walk, episode 213, Neil, you read out my email, which ultimately turns out to be the story of how I'm starting down the path of battling CLL/SLL, which is a form of lymphatic cancer. During my private audience, it all sounds so regal, with Neil, almost 2 weeks ago, we talked about, he says, how I document this journey, a diary of sorts with photos, of course, and potentially a multimedia component. I've been struggling with finding the right way to do this. For the moment, I've settled on keeping things simple and using a combination of my blog and my current 365 project on Flickr. The Friday photo walks, both listening and contributing, have been greatly therapeutic. See, there's that word that we use so often with photography, isn't it? Therapeutic. We also use cathartic, don't we, as well? But therapeutic, he says. Ever since before my diagnosis, and more so thereafter. You'll understand why when you read my first blog post about the journey. And I will, do you know what, I'll leave the, just in case you don't really want to join Facebook, for whatever reason, we're a lovely, friendly bunch in there. You'll meet Eric and all the others that are in there. We have conversations about the things that we shoot and any photographic problems we may have. But I'll also link to his blog as well, so you can go straight to it. The wider blog piece that it opens onto is a really important piece of photo project making because, I do read a strong degree of catharsis about it. I also read somebody making a story who's trying to tell you what something is like without actually scaring you witless or driving you away, because, of course, Western culture has us run for the hills, doesn't it, when you hear the word cancer. But Eric's piece, it's gentle, it's the start, it's something I'm so pleased that you found the strength to write and photograph, Eric, and all power to your elbow, as they say. So yes, I've popped the Facebook link up because there are some good folk of Photography Daily talking about this in there with Eric too, but equally I'll put the link on today's show page that takes you straight to Eric's 365 feature, where the story, no doubt, will continue. And as a fellow Canadian, Peter McKinnon says, I'm also popping up pictures today in the show notes from your late April photo walk, Eric, which I'm calling, I think, a study in simplicity. And those kinds of pictures only us photo types get, I think. You know, the kind of pictures you make where somebody looks at it. I've talked about it before, haven't I, when I've been taking pictures of puddles and somebody says, "It's a puddle, mate," as they cycle past. Yes, Eric's done some similar observations of life. Less puddles, but they are the sort of pictures you make, Eric, where somebody less tuned to the somethings and nothings of life may say, "What are you photographing?" as they walk by. And we can all look at each other, can't we? With a knowing look, a wink and a glint in our eye. Let me get some of these lush greens then. I'm going to pop you in my pocket. There we go. And grab out my X Pro 1. I'm on ISO 250, 60th of a second, f4. Probably need to just open that aperture a bit because... one stop more, I think, because there we go. We've got, it's quite dark today. I'm going to hide my camera away again. Take you out the pocket. Yeah, had a bit of a shock actually. Last week, I was moving some kit around in the back of the car, and you know what I'm going to say, don't you? And the X Pro 1 was balanced just at the back of the boot, or the trunk, as you'd say. I knocked it and it fell out onto concrete. And I just, when you drop a piece of kit, you kind of freeze. I looked at it and first of all, I thought, I don't dare pick that up. But it got a bit scratched. And I'm afraid to say to my very good friend Tim Binder now from America, who sent me a beautiful 28mm vintage lens, that the top of the lens, Tim, I'm so sorry, got a bit dented, but it works perfectly, no probs. But the camera's doing a few strange things. It's showing me some signs that it doesn't usually show me, but actually it seems to be working. I was looking on our incredible Photography Daily Facebook group. I'm mentioning Facebook again. Neil, come on, stop it. You're shoehorning this in too much. I haven't joined yet, but I'll make my decision on my own, in my own time, at my leisure. I know. But I was looking at the incredible Photography Daily Facebook group with a coffee, 3 Garibaldis, because it was a decadent moment, and the music of Madeleine Peyrou, who, if you listen to the photo walk as you're making a photo walk, after you finish the episode, go to your Spotify, look up Madeleine. It's like meditation in the form of dinner jazz on a walk. It really is. When she starts singing in French, oh, I am lost. Anyway, I was looking at the feed and I was met with several proper left hooks, knocked me sideways in a fabulous way. Some really great pictures on there. I'll link to these on the show page today, but if you'd like to see more and you're not yet a member of the Facebook, I'm drawing up a ringside seat so we can munch on some Garibaldis together and get lost with Madeleine and enjoy the work of Kevin Rugland. He is the first, yes. Some pictures from today's walk, he says, with my daughter to some remote areas in Kvinesdal, Norway. Came across this old weathered barn with a lot of textures and shapes. Spent some time trying to capture it. When I got back to the stroller with my daughter, she'd fallen asleep. She was behind me the whole time, he says. Also tried some new framing for photos, got some inspiration, or rather stole the idea from the feed of Discover Still. Oh yes, with Paul Sanders. So square formatted pictures. That's what Kevin has produced here. Thanks for pointing me to his site last week. Some beautiful photos that's calmed my head, which is much needed. And I love what he says now. Listen to this. Have a great weekend. Go out, everybody, and shoot what you feel like, and don't let anyone talk you down. Yes. Kevin Rugland's pictures are, they're just beautifully serene. They are full of solace, full of calm, full of, dare I say, Madeleine Peyrou. They're singing to me, Kevin. Are you daft, Neil? Are you punch drunk on the rain that you're standing in? I could just be, yes. I've got to walk the last part of this hill in a moment to try and get to the top to photograph that lonesome tree. One of the good things about making a photo walk, actually, in the teeming rain, apart from the fact I can't feel my hands, the microphone is, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that all the rain falling on this Gutmann windshield is going to protect the microphone capsule. Otherwise, I'm going to be looking for a new microphone for next week's walk. And the camera, just stay with me, camera, stay with me. And then he's becoming a regular. We should have a much better, altogether more arty-sounding word for that, shouldn't we, really, or phrase for that. This is Mally Davis. Hello, Mally. Yesterday, he says, was a classic photo walk. I didn't walk all the way to the Lake District, but my day was walking around the water called Thirlmere, a place I adore and I enjoy so much because of its remote feeling. You can almost hear the voices of the past and the village that once filled that valley before they flooded it to make a reservoir that feeds all of Manchester. So the history and the surrounding mountains make for an amphitheatre of emotion. Oh, Mally, that's so poetic, an amphitheatre of emotion. Amazing. The light, he says, takes a lot longer to fill the valley because this time of the year it has to rise above the mighty Helvellyn. When that happens, you get spilling light flooding the trees, cascading across the frozen silver birch and water. Here's a photograph, says Mally, from yesterday's photo walk. A moment of light on a blue sky day. Always head out because you never know what could happen on your sensor. He's absolutely right. And I'll put that picture on today's show notes so that you can see it. It's gorgeous. Mally, thank you so much for, I know you didn't go out to make that picture for us. I like to feel you did. But, the picture has wonderful earthy tones. Again, it's full of quiet. Just like Kevin Rugland's a moment ago. I love pictures that I'm going to get this wrong, aren't I? Shout at you with quiet. If I'm allowed an oxymoron. But I tell you what, that idea of villages being under the reservoir, it does spook me somewhat. My imagination, Mally's gone into complete overload or overdrive. And I think some kind of, I think of some kind of fantastical life still going on down there underneath the water. I don't know, the fish in the local boozer, meeting up on a Friday night for a pint or in the butcher's. Amboth and Withburn. I did look it up, had a little search to see what villages are underneath the reservoir. Amboth and Withburn, they're under there. There must be There must be many other places like this, many in the world. And I know there's a few sunken churches around the UK. Right, let's play a kind of connected clip. Well, very tenuously connected from episode 153. We're talking about water, aren't we? Jonathan Critchley talks about being next to the water. He's not really talking about pictures here. He's a phenomenal photographer, takes these gorgeous pictures of the coast and being out on the water and sailboats. But this is him talking about the peace, the quiet, the solace that water just generally brings him. And I'm sure he doesn't mean rain like today.
The sea became a place that I would go and without having to say anything, I felt like I was being understood, and made me feel fairly insignificant and small, and in that way made me realize that my problems were insignificant and small compared to other things that were going on. And that's really a sense of what I still feel now when I'm in the sea or by the sea or on the sea or whatever. I feel that I'm part of something huge, but a very tiny small part of something very huge, and I like that feeling. It sort of grounds us all, I think.
And then being out at sea as well, sailing, I would imagine that's a very different emotion.
It's just heaven. I adore being on the sea, and now I have my children now are 14 and a half, and we recently just came back just before lockdown. We were down on the Mediterranean coast, and as always, I wanted to rent a boat for half a day, and I would quite happily stay on the water for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and not think about it and be happy. They, of course, being much more normal than I am, after 3 hours said, shall we head back now and get some lunch?
Right. Continuing that was the amazing Jonathan Critchley, by the way. Continuing my journey up this hill to try and get to the famous tree at Watership Down, which I'm sure formed a storyline for that story about, oh no, don't talk about rabbits again. Oh, there's a wonderful, this sort of gate here that leads to nowhere. Is it worth a picture? Yeah. Let's pop you in the pocket. I'm afraid the ISO won't read differently. I don't think it's going to be a surprising day in terms of how the camera's used. I'm still at, all right, let's have F4. 60th, hold it nice and steady. I'm manually focusing because I'm back on my X Pro 1 this week. Lush greens because it's raining. Don't I know it? There we go. It's all about the something and nothings. Take you out of my pocket. There we go. Right. Yes, Jonathan Critchley a moment ago. Let's dive into some more of your comments. Mark Neal has been struggling with a bit of creative block of late, and he posted in the Facebook group, and I actually did a piece about it on the More episode yesterday, which patrons will find. I'm numbering them now, so I was getting a bit lost. Somebody the other day said, what was the one that you talked about X on? I thought, I can't remember. I didn't number those ones, but we're up to 34 now, marching ahead. And we talked on the More episode about William Eggleston. Without going back over all that ground, we talked about how he would go out sometimes for 3 hours, sometimes a day, in his neighbourhood, same places, not always the same streets, I'm sure, but he'd go and make pictures of just anything he saw, often actually in golden light, beautiful golden light, when even a picture of a Coke can could look absolutely beautiful with its long shadows in a window. But yes, Mark Neal wrote in, he'd been struggling with some creative block, and be sure to go to the show page today, because I'm going to put up some of the pictures that he made in London on the show page, which are fabulous shadow play in the capital. But just a further thought from my More thoughts yesterday in the Patreon area. Sometimes this creative block, I like to call it, actually, I was thinking about this, creative drift. Just, you just sort of cut loose for a time. And I think you just let the tide take you. Don't fight it. A bit like a riptide. Don't swim against it, you'll come a cropper. Just let it take you. Then swim out from the sides, as they say, and re-find yourself. Creative drift. I don't know whether I read that somewhere. It's just something that I genuinely have thought. Quick, TM it, Neil. It's quite a good phrase. But it's a very meditative approach, isn't it? And like you did with your shadow plays, Mark, you just let yourself go, look around, make pictures when and if the moment takes. No shadows or deep sun that day, don't worry. Go sit down, take on a coffee, couple of Garibaldis from Tesco, sit and watch the world. Job, full stop, done, full stop. But the mailbag this week, I've got to say, go and see Mark Neal's pictures on the show page today. Do, because they're super. And I'm sure we'll talk about creative block or creative drift a lot more over the coming months. The mailbag is bristling this week, so if your message isn't read out today, doubtless it will be in the coming weeks. But don't let that put you off from sending in. Don't think, he's got enough, I don't need to send anything in. We always need stuff. That Friday Photowalk mailbag, or the Friday Photowalk show, which we're on right now, it's very hungry. It needs your input, definitely. So do keep sending in your wonderful pictures and your wonderful thoughts about your photography and what you're up to, because I'm always interested to hear from you. Send them to studio@photographydaily.show. I might take some more shelter again. The rain's just gone up to number 11, to use a Spinal Tap phrase. Here's one from Chile, from Paul Ballaresque, where of course the seasons are different. It's autumn now, isn't it, to the end of May in Chile. And rabbits! I have not got a long lens on, so I'm not going to do any justice to this picture, but it's a rabbit. Watership down and a rabbit. Feels so poetic. Don't talk about rabbits, Neil. Hi Neil, from Paul Ballaresque. My Friday photocycling to my weekly PCR test. There's something we weren't saying a couple of years back, Paul? While locked down in Vina del Mar due to COVID, Chile ranking in the top countries on vaccination, but fighting a nasty autumn number N wave with a very, very strict lockdown. I did intend to go walking, but got up so late, had to grab the bike instead. Well, at least you can still get out. That's good. I think that was one of the hardest things about lockdowns in some countries, where you literally weren't allowed to get out. You could take exercise to the end of your yard or something like that. Only ever go shopping if you really needed to once a week, and various other rules and regs that were laid down in different countries. So I'm pleased that you're able to get out. A photo cycle or a photo walk, they all count as long as you take your camera. And in this case, yes, he did. Paul took his camera, and I'll include his empty street pictures on the show page, which are so hauntingly like our street pictures from this time last year. You know, those, I think everybody rushed out to take those initially, didn't they? Till they realised that everybody was doing it. But they're important documentary pictures, aren't they? And you see them from all around the world, and you think, we actually are all in this together. Paul, thank you for those pictures. Very much appreciate them, and they're marvellous black and whites. They really are. They are quite haunting, but they'll be on the show page. Here's one from Keith Fincham on episode 220, which of course was at the start of the week when the New York Times published your photo story. That was the title of the show, which was Rolf Smith. It was a delight to talk to Rolf, the National Geographic photographer, who is usually travelling all around the world making amazing stories, including Panama hats, of all things. He went to Ecuador to photograph the world's best Panama hat maker. Oh, what a job. But of course, over the last year, he hasn't been able to travel like that, so he's stuck to a tight 10 miles radius of his home on the south coast of England, cycling and observing the countryside and the seafront where he lives, and making these amazing self-portraits where he essentially puts the tripod at the side of the road or a location and cycles on past. And sometimes you see these marvellous, beautiful sunsets or sunrises where he appears to be either riding into them or riding out of them. So it's worth seeing the pictures on the show page, and of course the link will take you to on the show page will take you to his site as well. Good day from Brisbane, Australia, says Keith. I sense the optimism in your voice as the UK starts to open up, and I hope for you and Kevin, of course, my reprobate mate on the Fuji cast, and everybody in the photographic community who've had their wings clipped for so long that the work opportunities rebound at a pace. I listen to both your podcasts, this and the Fujicast, avidly. And I loved the episode with Rolf Smith and his enthusiasm. I was charmed by the phrase, which eludes me now. I'll have to listen again, he says. But it was in reference to the fact that you don't have to get on an aircraft to enjoy the magic of change. Something like that. Yes, it was. Look, I'm in the rain, and I really should have checked this before I came out. I'll check it when I get back. But I tell you what, let's play a little from Rolf's episode, Monday Just Gone, episode 220. He talks about being a perfectionist here, out on his bike, making his self-portraits.
I get home and I look at stuff and I study it very closely and very critically. And I've gone back to reshoot things plenty of times where I look and in fact, I did it just the other day. I realized the jersey I was wearing just simply wasn't right. It just didn't work with the backdrop. And you just wait until you get a similar sort of light and then try and go back and do it. The most extreme example of this wasn't with the jersey so much, but with the simple dissatisfaction of my perspective on a scene. I had really wanted to get this stretch of lane with some huge old oaks in heavy frost. Yeah. And there was a morning when it was about -5, and I rode by starlight about an hour and a quarter, hour and a half to get to this place. Freezing. I mean, it was cold. Yeah. And I spent half an hour, 45 minutes shooting this particular scene, rode back home feeling fairly satisfied. And I looked at it and I could just see that the camera angle was I needed to have lowered the camera a quarter of an inch and it would have made all the difference. And I couldn't look at those images because it bugged me. So the next morning, it was fortunately still very clear, bitterly cold. I rode all the way back out there and redid the shoot, came home. This time, thank goodness, I was satisfied.
Rolf Smith. And that episode, if you get a chance to listen, it was wonderful to talk to a National Geographic photographer, writer, contributor, really was. What a wonderful man. Completely at peace with himself as well, which is always wonderful to hear. I'm still climbing this hill. It's like one of those hills that you just goes up. Doesn't actually reach the end. Well, just before I was interrupted by the rabbit that I didn't get the picture of earlier, I was just about to say one of the nice things about coming out in the rain is that I get that alone time that I really love when I'm making photo walks. Instead of having to stop every so often and explain why I'm talking into a furry thing shoved on the top of my iPhone 8. What are you doing? Making a podcast. Oh, what's a podcast? Well, he says, digging in for the next half hour. Anyway, would you like some show news? Yes, please, Neil. Let's do some show news. Mondays are going to change just very slightly. Not too much. But they're going to become the more business-focused episode, which does not mean that it becomes, a business photography podcast. No, not at all, because you know me, all about the story. We like the why over the how, although sometimes the how is interesting sometimes, yes. But I looked at the Sundays, because I know I'd said they were going to be on Sundays as a Sunday supplement. And then I spoke with a friend of mine who he's got a very well-established production company. They work for the BBC, don't you know, all those sort of people. And he was quite interested in Photography Daily. He'd actually listened to a couple of episodes. And I mentioned the Sundays episode, and honestly, he spat his Garibaldi across the desk, which I heard all the way from his place in London, along the M4, a little bit of the A34 and the A4 toward my house. I could still hear it. And he said, "Don't do that, Neil, honestly." So we had a chat, and I said, well, I have to say I was beginning to wonder how I was going to do the Sunday show and the Monday and the Wednesday and the Friday as my very own production team on my own. He said, "Well, why don't you talk to photographers that do frequent this social arena, you know, the portrait photographers, the headshotters, even the wedding photographers." What am I saying even for? I'm a wedding photographer. The editorial photographers, those people that turn a dime, that are so important to the photographic industry, not just because they make money and they pay their rent and keep their children in new Lego sets, but because they creatively bring something to the industry, but also the art and the genre. God, he was very poetic. I thought, you should be doing the podcast, not me. And he's absolutely right. So Mondays, we're going to start doing a story episode, as we always have before. Mondays and Wednesdays are the story episodes. But there will be an add-on, and that will be the business part of it. So if you like the story, well, fill your boots. It'll still be a story. But if you want to get to know how their business works and a little bit more about their marketing magic, how they've done things, why they do things, why they've been successful, then that bit will be available on the Patreon channel. Yeah, so there we go. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays. Nothing changes, really. That was show news without it being that much show news. Next week, Wednesday. Oh, do I have a guest for you? Should I tell you now? No, I'll tell you at the end. I'll let my warm studio self fill you in with all the details about Mondays and Wednesday's guests, because my hands, frankly, they've gone white. I can't feel my feet. I can't feel my hands. So it must be last mail of the week time, but I am going to climb this hill and get that picture of this blooming tree. I've walked this far in the rain. I will not be perturbed. So last mail of the week, which is it's kind of based on a Patreon show we did about van life a couple of weeks back, being a photographer on the road and all that, but it'll make sense to everybody else as I read this. Hello, Neil, says Andrew McElroy. I've started several listener emails, yet this is the first one I've finally got around to sending. My father-in-law introduced me to your current podcast while I was building out a Ram ProMaster van. A Ram ProMaster van, that sounds properly van life-like, doesn't it? In his driveway over the last few months. My wife and I have been dreaming of van life for several years and finally saw an opportunity with the post-pandemic remote work atmosphere here in the States. The podcast has rejuvenated my photography as I went through a significant creative pause. Talking about creative pause again. Or drift, maybe. During the pandemic, week after week, I hear episodes speaking directly to where I am creatively. As I said, I've started several listener emails. However, this week's more episode about van life, wow, 100% my current spot in life and photography. It does sound amazing, doesn't it? Travelling in your van, stopping every so often to make these glorious pictures of the world around you without the rain. Last month, he says, I gave up my beat-up Fujifilm X-T10 to an aspiring photographer. I've decided to go 90% film and 10% iPhone. As Ryan Vision said on that More episode, there's something about that physical format that tells a story in a way that digital copies can't. The inspiration to ditch the digital came from deleting all my social media accounts, so no motivation to post a photo in exchange for likes. Although actually, I do hope that when you get on the road, you do what Ryan has done and you get back on social and share your journeys, because I know there's it's a double-edged sword, isn't there, social? There's this kind of love-hate, wrangle, tangle, tug, pull against and for it. But I'd love to see your journey. Oh, and he says it was a 2,500-mile trip across the US to Seattle, Washington, a couple of years ago. On this cross-country trip, I took out only my 35mm film camera, which was a Konica Auto Reflex T with a 52mm lens for the photo gear nerds. I put the film in a box, forgot to develop it. When downsizing our 550 square foot apartment to our new 77-foot van, yes, that's quite a lot less, I found the Ilford HP5 400 film, had it developed. Before I got the film back, I could remember almost all the shots I took on that trip. And when I received the film, my memories flooded back even stronger. This aspect of photography is why I decided to go back to the limit of 36 shots a roll and a hard copy of these photographic memories that my wife and I will be making as we begin van life full-time this summer. Yes. Oh, can I come? I'll fit in your suitcase. Well, I wouldn't at the moment. I've still got my post-COVID body. Not that I had the COVID. What I mean is, with the lockdown diet, I think as people call it. I'm sure that I'll be sending more listener mails, he says, and will attach van life photos when we're full-time on the road. Thanks for creating a podcast that's inspiring us photographers to get back behind the lens. Much appreciated from Andrew McElroy. Thank you, Andrew. P.S. he says, thanks for not filling the podcast with ads. I'm glad to be a patron and encourage all the listeners to give up a single roll of film a month to support you. Ooh. Thank you for that. And that's also just given me an idea. I'll talk about that one later. But on the subject of film, I took my F5 out a couple of days back to use up the roll that's in there. Because unlike you, I really can't remember what was on there. I know you remembered everything that was on your last roll of film, not me. But I'm looking forward to the surprise that's going to surface when they're developed. Oh, so looking forward to that. So I tell you what, let's stick with film as our last clip of the week. I want to play you a little of an episode. Number 29, it was well back with Dennis Lee. Way back when we were still finding our feet really in those days, weren't we? Episode 29, of course we were. It's a clip about Dennis's first works film camera, which was all that he shot with to make his marvellous press shots that he made, black and white, gorgeous, rich shots working in the business. And you may be surprised because this really isn't that long ago to hear how simple and basic the approach was. The eye was definitely more important than all this chat about megawatts, wasn't it? Here's Dennis Lee.
So my first Nikon body was a Nikon F2AS. Fantastic camera. It had a prism that you could take off and change it with other different finders. It had a sports finder available, it had a waist level finder available, and it had a plain prism available, which is what I eventually moved to. The photonic prism had a meter built inside of it, but it was pretty big, and it took up a lot of space in the camera bag. So the plain prism was really low, really sleek, nothing on top of it. The hot shoe for this camera was actually an accessory that you had to put on top of the film rewind knob. So there was nothing on top of the prism, which meant that there was no meter inside of the camera. When you looked into the viewfinder, all you saw was your focusing screen and your image. That was it.
And that's it for this week. Who's waiting around the podcast corner for you next week on PD? Well, Monday we start with the first of our Story Business Extra episodes. Michael Quelch from Sydney, one of the city's most in-demand portrait and headshot photographers. In fact, one of the questions we will ask is, do headshots actually exist? Is it a portrait or is it a headshot? What's the difference? Does it matter? And how to make better portraits of your own. Then Wednesday, a World Press Photo Award winner for her work on 9/11 and the editor of a book called Women Street Photographers, Gulnara Samoilova, who's published the work of 100 photographers around the world. We talk about the work of women street photographers, highlighting some of those in the book, cultural challenges, and how social media has been a positive beacon of light to bring these artists to the fore. Keep sending your questions or feedback to studio@photographydaily.show so that I can feature you in the mailbag edition, which is, of course, this, the Friday Photo Walk. And be sure to visit today's website show page for links to guests and all things discussed. You'll find a link on the description in your podcast player app as normal. Thanks to mpb.com, the number one team when it comes to buying used, selling your used, or trading in Europe, the UK and the States. Music in the show was from artlist.io, and I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you, and talking with you next time.
Look, I found it. It's the tree, but there's an almighty but here. It's ages away in the distance. Look at that. I've walked up a path that's taken me about as far away from the tree as I could possibly be. Still teeming with rain. I think the fun's gone from the walk. I'm going to take a picture, put the tree on the third, give up and make my way back down. What do you think about that idea, Carl? A very good idea. I know. Can't believe you walked all the way up a hill just to go and see a tree that used to belong to some rabbits or something. Not just any rabbits, Carl. These are the rabbits from Watership Down. I know, but all the same. Have you read the book? No. Why not? Well, I only read car manuals. Maybe you should extend your reading.
Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.